Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The winds that swept across Dorne's northern dunes carried the scent of scorched sand and forgotten blood. Even in the cool hours before dawn, the air trembled with heat, rising from the parched earth like a whisper of things buried too long ago. Upon this restless desert rode a man without a name. He was clothed in plain brown robes, his hood drawn low, his face unremarkable. He could have been a merchant, a hermit, or a wandering scholar. None would look twice, and that was his greatest strength. To those who watched him pass, he was simply no one. Yet under the folds of that robe, hidden near his heart, was a coin of blackened iron, stamped with a weeping face. That coin marked him for what he truly was, one of the faceless men of Braavos. The man's horse, a thin, pale creature unused to desert heat, stumbled through the dunes. The rider did not curse or soothe it. His voice was saved for other things, prayers to the many-faced god, silent invocations uttered as his eyes traced the line of the sun, seeking guidance. His mission had begun far from these sands, in the fog-drenched city of Braavos, where the canals gleamed like mirrors and the house of black and white waited in eternal stillness. There, beneath the carved statues of gods forgotten by men, he had been given a task whispered in the dark. Seek the gift of the desert, bring it home. No more had been said, no questions were permitted. He was no one, and no one asks why. Rumors had guided his path, tales of an alchemist who had fled the Reach before Robert's rebellion, a man once favored by Aerys the Mad King. The alchemist had stolen a secret from King's Landing before the city burned, a vial said to contain a powder of pale gold that shimmered like starlight. In taverns and travelers' camps, men called it the gift of the desert. None knew what it did, only that it had driven men mad with desire and fear alike. Now the faceless man followed that trail into Dorne, where the sun itself seemed a cruel god. As dawn spilled over the horizon, the world ignited in red and gold. In the distance, he saw the faint outline of a fortress, abandoned, half buried by the dunes. His horse's hooves sank into the soft sand as he approached. A vulture circled above, its shadow crossing the ground like a curse. Inside the ruins, he found signs of life. A campfire long extinguished, broken glass scattered like ice, and the mark of boot prints leading east. Someone had been here recently. He knelt beside the ashes, sifting through them with gloved fingers. The fire was 2 days cold. He found the remnant of a parchment half burnt, a line still visible in smeared ink. The gift must not fall into their hands. Their hands. His lips curved slightly beneath his hood. That meant more hunters. He turned his gaze to the horizon. The dunes shimmered like a golden sea, endless and deceptive. But far off, where the sands darkened into the broken hills near the Greenblood River, something glinted, a reflection of metal, perhaps a camp or a watchtower. The faceless man rose and began walking, leaving his horse tethered in the shade of the ruin. Horses tired easily in the desert, men did not if they had forgotten who they were. By midday, he reached the edge of the hills, where thorny brush broke the monotony of the sand. There, he found tracks again, smaller footprints beside heavier ones. A group, perhaps 3 or 4, and one of them light, deliberate, like a dancer's step, a woman's maybe. He followed. The trail led to a narrow ravine where shadows clung even in the heat of day. The air cooled, and he heard the faint trickle of water. Rare mercy in this land. He crouched by the stream and cupped his hands, letting the water touch his lips, but not quench his thirst entirely. As he drank, he noticed something glimmering at the edge of the water. A ring. It was made of bronze, plain but old, engraved with a sigil he recognized. A sun pierced by a spear. House Martell. Before he could consider this, a voice spoke behind him. "You've followed me far enough, stranger." He turned slowly. Standing at the mouth of the ravine was a young woman dressed in desert garb, her face half covered by a scarf of crimson silk. Her eyes were sharp as cut glass, her skin kissed by the sun. In her hand was a short spear, its tip glinting with oil. "Who are you?" she demanded. The faceless man regarded her in silence. The question meant nothing to him. "Who I am is no one's concern," he said at last, his voice calm, measured. "But I seek a man, an alchemist. You have crossed his path." Her stance shifted, wary. "Many have, and most who do end up dead. Why should I speak to you?" "Because," he said, reaching into his robe, "we hunt the same prey." He tossed the burnt scrap of parchment at her feet. Her eyes flickered down, recognition flaring. For a moment, neither spoke. The desert wind whispered between them, carrying the distant cry of a hawk. Finally, she lowered her spear, though her gaze never softened. "Name's Nymeria Sand," she said, "bastard of Dorne. And if you're after the alchemist, you'll need more than shadows and riddles to catch him." The faceless man inclined his head slightly. "Then lead me." Nymeria smirked. "I don't lead, I guide, and I expect something in return. What would you ask of no one?" "Vengeance," she said simply. "He killed my father." The faceless man said nothing. In his line of work, vengeance was a shallow grave, but he needed her knowledge of the desert. So, without another word, he nodded, and as the sun dipped low behind the dunes, two hunters set out together, one driven by faith, the other by fury, following the same shadow across a land that buried all secrets in sand. They did not yet know the truth, that the desert would take from them more than they sought to claim. Night came swiftly to the desert, cloaking its endless sands in shades of indigo and silver. The air cooled, and the stars rose like scattered embers across a blackened sky. The faceless man walked beside Nymeria Sand, their footprints weaving a silent path through the dunes. The only sounds were the whisper of wind and the faint jingle of her spear against her belt. They had not spoken for an hour when she finally broke the quiet. "You never said your name." "I have none," he replied. "Everyone has a name," she countered, glancing at him sidelong. "Even the dead had names once." He turned his head slightly, his hood shadowing his face. "Names are burdens. Faces are masks. Both can be taken away." Nymeria let out a low whistle. "You speak like a priest or a madman." "Both serve the same God," he said, and the hint of a smile touched his lips. Her eyes narrowed. "You're one of them, aren't you? The faceless men. I've heard whispers, killers who wear other people's skins." He did not confirm it, but she knew by his silence. She looked away, her mouth tightening. "I don't care what gods you serve, so long as you help me find him. The alchemist murdered my father 3 years past. He came to Sunspear under false name, selling poisons to the highest bidder. My father tried to stop him, and he failed." "Yes," she said bitterly. "He failed because the man disappeared, slipped into the desert with his vials and his gold, and I've been chasing his ghost ever since." The faceless man nodded once. "Then we chase him together." By dawn, they reached the ruins of an old watchtower overlooking the Greenblood's winding path. The tower's stones were bleached white by sun and sand. Within its hollow shell, they found a scattering of bones, camel, perhaps, or man. It was hard to tell. Nymeria crouched by a half-buried skeleton. "He's been here," she murmured. "This was one of his camps. See that?" She pointed to the faint black residue clinging to a clay bowl. "Ash from his fire. Smells of brimstone and resin." The faceless man picked up a fragment of glass beside it. It shimmered faintly, even in shadow. "Alchemist's work," he said. "He uses sand and flame to make his craft." Nymeria's gaze met his. Then we're close. They left the tower and followed the Greenblood's edge, where the land softened into rocky gullies and sparse scrub. It was there they found the first sign of pursuit, not of the alchemist, but of them. At the mouth of a dry ravine lay a corpse, freshly dead. A sellsword, judging by the armor, his throat neatly slit. The sand around him was undisturbed, save for one set of boot prints leading south. The faceless man studied the body. Someone else hunts him. Or hunts us, Nymeria said grimly. That night they made camp in the shelter of a dune. Nymeria built a small fire, careful to shield its light from the wind. The faceless man sat across from her, sharpening a short blade with slow precision. "Tell me," she said suddenly, "why you want this gift of the desert? You say it's for your temple, but what is it truly?" He paused, his hand stilling over the blade. "It is said to free men from their faces, to make them as the wind, without form, without memory." Nymeria frowned. "Sounds like death to me." He inclined his head. "Perhaps that is what freedom truly is." She shook her head. "You Bravosi and your riddles. I only want one thing, to look that man in the eyes before I send him to the stranger. Then may your wish be granted." The wind picked up, scattering sparks from the fire. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the desert breathe. Then Nymeria leaned back and said softly, "I used to dream of the sea. My mother told me stories of Nymeria, how she led her people across the waters to find a new home. I thought I'd do the same one day. But the desert has a way of chaining you to the land." The faceless man looked into the flames. "All lands are prisons. Only the dead are truly free." Before dawn, they were moving again. The trail grew clearer, the sands darker with each passing mile. Strange shapes rose on the horizon, pillars of stone carved by wind, some etched with faint runes half swallowed by time. By midday, they reached a canyon where the air shimmered with heat. A narrow path wound downward between sheer cliffs. At its base, a small tent stood beside a pool of still water. Nymeria's hand went to her spear. "That's his camp." The faceless man nodded. "Stay here." He descended silently, his steps soundless on the stone. As he neared the tent, he caught a faint smell, chemicals, burnt glass, and something else beneath it. Decay. He lifted the flap and entered. Inside, glass vials lined the ground, filled with liquids of every hue. Strange sigils were drawn on the tent's inner walls in chalk. At the center sat a small wooden box, its lid sealed with wax. The faceless man knelt beside it. The wax bore an emblem, a serpent coiled around a sun. Before he could open it, a voice behind him said, "I wouldn't touch that if I were you." He turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall, robed in pale linen, his hair white as bone, his eyes gleaming with feverish light. "The alchemist," the faceless man said quietly. The man smiled, revealing teeth stained yellow with age. "You wear no face of your own? How fitting." The gods must have a cruel sense of humor, sending one like you after me. The faceless man rose. You have something that belongs to the House of Black and White. The alchemist's smile widened. Ah, the gift. You've come too late. The desert has already claimed it. Nimera's voice rang from behind him. Liar. She burst into the tent, spear raised. The alchemist flinched but recovered quickly. Ah, the girl of Sunspear, he said. I remember your father's screams. Nimera lunged, but the faceless man caught her arm. Not yet. The alchemist laughed. You seek death, both of you, but death comes in many faces. Do you even know what the gift is? He reached for the wooden box, broke the seal, and lifted the lid. Inside was a vial of shimmering dust, glowing faintly even in shadow. It pulsed like liquid moonlight. The gift of the desert, the alchemist whispered. Born from the sands that once drowned Valeria's fire, a single breath of it can unmake the flesh. Nimera's eyes widened. You mean, it strips away the face, the man said, his voice trembling with awe. All faces, until nothing remains. The faceless man's hand tightened on his dagger. You play with things meant for gods. And what are you? The alchemist spat. A man who kills in their name? I am a creator. I sought to make freedom itself. Freedom bought with death is not freedom, said the faceless man. The alchemist smiled sadly. Then you understand nothing. He hurled the vial at the ground. The glass shattered, releasing a cloud of golden dust. It shimmered as it spread, curling like smoke. The faceless man leapt back, dragging Nimera with him. The alchemist screamed, his flesh rippling, melting as the dust clung to him. His face dissolved into nothingness. When the dust settled, only a robe remained. Nimera trembled. What was that? The faceless man knelt beside the remains, his eyes unreadable. The gift, he murmured, and it has been claimed. He reached down, gathering the last grains of golden sand into a small glass vial. Then it's over, Nimera said, her voice hollow. No, he said softly. The desert never gives without taking. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying with it the faint, mournful echo of laughter that did not belong to the living. The sun rose red the next morning, bleeding light across the dunes. The faceless man and Nimera stood before the smoldering ruin of the alchemist's camp. The tent had collapsed during the night, and what had not been buried by the restless sands was burned beyond recognition. No trace of the body remained, only the faint shimmer of dust caught in the morning air. Nimera wrapped her scarf tighter about her face, her eyes weary and hard. We have what we came for, she said, nodding to the vial in the faceless man's hand. Let's return to Sunspear. I can find you a ship north. But the faceless man did not move. He turned the vial slowly between his fingers. The dust within glowed faintly, swirling as though alive. The gift is not yet spent, he murmured. Its work is unfinished. She frowned. What do you mean? The alchemist is dead. He looked up at her, the morning light catching the shadow beneath his hood. Are you certain of that? Nimera's brow furrowed. She turned toward the ruins, but where the tent had stood, the sand was shifting, collapsing inward. Beneath it, something pulsed faintly, like a buried heart. The faceless man's hand went to his dagger. Stay back, he warned. The ground trembled. A shape began to rise, a figure cloaked in rags, its skin half-formed, its face a blur of shadow and pale light. It staggered upright, letting out a rasping breath that was more like wind through hollow reeds. Nimera stumbled back, her spear raised. By the Seven! The thing took a step forward. Its voice was faint and distorted, as if echoing from many mouths at once. "You cannot kill freedom." The faceless man's eyes narrowed. "He bound his soul to the dust," he said quietly. "A fool's attempt to escape death." Nymeria thrust her spear forward, but the weapon passed through the specter like smoke. The figure laughed, a dry, chilling sound. "Do you think I would die so easily?" the alchemist hissed. "I am the gift now. Every grain of sand remembers my face." The faceless man drew a small vial of dark liquid from his belt and flung it at the apparition. It shattered, and a cloud of black smoke billowed forth. The creature recoiled with a shriek, retreating into the dunes. When the air cleared, only silence remained. Nymeria's hands shook. What was that thing? "Something that should never have been born," said the faceless man, "and it will not rest while this vial exists." She glanced at the vial he still held. "Then destroy it." He looked at her with calm, pitiless eyes. "Some things cannot be destroyed, only returned." Nymeria's patience snapped. "Returned? To who? You talk like a priest while monsters walk in the sand." The faceless man turned away from her, his voice low. "To the many-faced God. All gifts come from him, and all must be given back." He began to walk, and after a moment's hesitation, she followed. For 2 days they traveled westward, toward the deep desert where the shifting dunes gave way to jagged stone. The faceless man spoke little, and Nymeria's anger cooled into wary curiosity. She watched him as they walked, how he seemed tireless, untouched by the heat. He ate little, drank less, and never slept long. On the 3rd night, they came upon an ancient ruin half buried in sand. Columns rose like the ribs of a buried beast, and a single statue stood unbroken, a woman with a blindfold carved across her eyes. Nymeria stared up at it. Who was she? "The Dornish call her the Lady of Dust," the faceless man said. "But once, long ago, she had another name. She was the last priestess of the many-faced god to walk these lands before the doom. Her temple lies beneath." Nymeria's eyes widened. "You mean to take that cursed thing down there?" He nodded. "It must be sealed in the House of Dust. Only there can it be contained." Before she could argue, a sound broke the stillness. A faint hiss, like sand pouring through glass. Nymeria spun, spear ready. The air itself seemed to shimmer, and then the alchemist's voice drifted across the wind. "You think you can hide my gift from me?" A cloud of golden dust began to swirl through the ruins, coalescing into a form. The faceless man seized Nymeria's wrist and pulled her toward the statue. "The entrance," he hissed. They found a narrow stair carved beneath the statue's base, descending into darkness. The faceless man drew a small lantern from his satchel and lit it, casting a dim glow over the stone steps. Behind them, the whispering grew louder. Down they went, one level, then another, until the air grew cool and heavy. The steps ended in a vast chamber. At its center stood a stone altar, carved with faces, hundreds of them, old and worn smooth by time. The faceless man approached the altar and placed the vial upon it. "We are here," he murmured. "Now it ends." But before he could speak the words of offering, the wind howled through the chamber. The golden dust poured in from the stairway, taking form again. The alchemist's twisted face gleaming with unholy light. "You cannot return what is already mine," he roared. The faceless man drew his dagger and stepped forward. "Then I will take it from you." The battle that followed was unlike any Nymeria had ever seen. The faceless man moved like shadow, his blade flashing in arcs of light. The alchemist's form shifted and swayed, every strike passing through mist. Yet each time the dagger cut through the air, the golden light dimmed, piece by piece. Nymeria saw her chance. Gripping her spear, she charged the altar and struck the vial, shattering it against the stone. A burst of golden fire filled the room. The alchemist screamed, an inhuman sound that made the stones tremble. His form flickered, tearing apart like sand in a storm. The faceless man shielded his eyes as the light consumed everything. When it faded, silence fell once more. The vial was gone, the altar was dark, and the alchemist was no more. Nymeria leaned on her spear, gasping. "Is it over?" The faceless man stood motionless for a long moment before answering. "Yes, for him." He turned to her. In the dim lantern light, his face seemed different, harder, older. She frowned, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" He lifted a hand to his cheek. For a moment, the flesh there shimmered, rippling as though it were not entirely his own. "The dust was not meant for mortal hands," he said quietly. "Even to destroy it, I had to touch it." Nymeria stared. "You mean?" He nodded. "Its gift is mine now." She took a step forward, but he raised a hand to stop her. "Do not follow me, Nymeria Sand. My path ends where yours begins. Tell your people the desert keeps its secrets." And before she could speak another word, he turned and walked into the shadows beyond the altar, vanishing as though the darkness had swallowed him whole. Nymeria stood alone beneath the carved faces of the dead. The air was still. The faint shimmer of gold lingered on the stone, like the last breath of a dying star. When she emerged from the ruin, the dawn had come again, painting the desert in pale fire. She looked to the horizon and thought she saw a figure walking there, his face lost to the light. Then the wind rose and the sands shifted, erasing his footprints as if he had never been there at all. Days passed before Nymeria dared return to Sunspear. The desert gave her no kindness on the journey home. The wind was sharp, and the sun showed no mercy. Yet, as she rode beneath the crimson banners of House Martell, the city seemed colder to her than the desert ever had. She had left a part of herself buried in those ruins, perhaps the best part. Sunspear bustled as always, traders shouting in the markets, children racing along the wharves, the scent of spiced wine and oranges on the wind. But for Nymeria, all sound felt distant, like echoes from another life. She went first to the water gardens to stand before the stone likeness of her father. The statue's face was calm, his hands resting on the hilt of a sword that had never known blood. He had died a good man, she thought, a kind fool in a world that rewarded neither kindness nor honesty. She touched the edge of the stone blade. "It's done," she whispered. "He's gone." But the words felt hollow, for even as she spoke them, the image of the faceless man haunted her mind. That moment when his flesh had shimmered, his features shifting like ripples upon water. Was he dead? Was he someone else now? Or had the desert swallowed even the memory of his name? Before she could lose herself in thought, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. She turned to see a man approaching, lean, sharp-featured, with the sun of Dorne worked in gold upon his breastplate. "Lady Nymeria," he said with a bow, "you have returned." "Captain Ordos," she replied curtly. "I told you not to call me lady. Bastards have no claim to that word." Ordos smiled faintly. "Forgive me. Old habits." His gaze flicked over her. "You've been gone for weeks. The prince has asked for you twice." She frowned. "The prince? Prince Doran himself? He wishes to speak of the alchemist you pursued." Nymeria stiffened. "How does he know of that?" Ordos shrugged. "News travels faster than ravens when gold is involved. Come, he waits in the tower." Reluctantly, she followed, The Tower of the Sun was cooler than the streets below, its walls thick and veined with pale marble. Doran Martell sat by an open window, the sea breeze stirring the folds of his robes. His face was calm as always, yet his eyes, dark, knowing, fixed upon her with quiet intensity. "You found him," he said, not as a question but as fact. Nymeria bowed her head. "Yes, my prince, the alchemist is dead." Doran regarded her for a long moment. "And the thing he carried, the gift of the desert?" She hesitated. "Destroyed, along with the man who made it." "Destroyed," he repeated softly, as though tasting the word. "Do you believe that?" Nymeria's jaw tightened. "It's gone. That's all that matters." The prince's eyes did not leave her face. "Things like that are never truly gone, child. They simply change hands." She said nothing. Finally, Doran leaned back and sighed. "Go, rest. The desert has taken enough of you." As she turned to leave, he added, "If you see your companion again, give him my thanks." Her step faltered. She looked back sharply. "You know of him?" "I know of all who come to Dorne uninvited," said the prince, "and I know what walks in the shadows of Braavos. Tell him this, should he ever return, that the Prince of Dorne remembers his debts." Nymeria left the chamber shaken. The faceless man had always seemed beyond the reach of lords and princes. To hear his name spoken in Sunspear's heart filled her with unease. That night, she could not sleep. The sea whispered below her window, restless as her thoughts. She dreamed of golden dust swirling in the wind, of faces melting into the sand. And when she woke, she found something glimmering upon her bedside table. It was a coin, black iron, stamped with a weeping face. Her breath caught. She picked it up, turning it in the candlelight. It was cold, impossibly so, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw her reflection shimmer upon its surface, her face and another's overlapping. The faceless man had left it. But why? She slipped the coin into her satchel and dressed quickly. If he still lived, she would find him. The thought frightened her as much as it thrilled her. By dawn, she was riding once more, following the river road north, away from Sunspear. The morning was cool, the sands silver beneath the rising sun. She rode hard until the city lay behind her, until only the desert stretched ahead. By midday, she reached a cluster of stone huts where the Greenblood split into two narrow streams. A group of wanderers tended to small gardens there, orphans of the Greenblood, as they called themselves. Peaceful folk, devoted to neither lord nor crown. An old woman rose to greet her, eyes clouded with age. "You ride fast, child," she said. "What do you seek?" "A man," Nymeria said. "A traveler who passed this way, hooded, silent." The woman nodded slowly. "Aye, I saw such a one 2 nights past. He asked no food, no rest, only a cup of water. When he drank, I saw his face shimmer, like heat upon the sand. I thought it a trick of the sun." Nymeria's heart quickened. "Which way did he go?" "East," the woman whispered, "toward the dunes of Vythe. But beware, child, the desert there remembers its dead." Nymeria thanked her and rode on. The wind rose behind her, carrying the scent of dust and distance. As the day waned, she reached the edge of the Vythe dunes, where the land turned strange and silent. No bird called here, no lizard stirred. The sand itself seemed alive, whispering beneath her horse's hooves. And then she saw him. A lone figure stood atop a ridge, his cloak billowing in the wind. For a moment, she thought it was a mirage, but as she drew closer, he turned, and she knew it was him. The faceless man. He looked unchanged, yet not the same. His eyes were deeper somehow, his expression distant, as though he stood between two worlds. "You should not have come," he said. "I had to," she replied. "You left this." She held up the coin. "Why?" He looked at it, and for the first time, she thought she saw sorrow in his eyes. "A token," he said softly, "to remind you that debts must be paid. One day the many-faced God will ask something of you." Her grip tightened on the coin. "I don't serve your God." "Every mortal does," he said. "Even those who deny it." The wind shifted, blowing a veil of sand between them. When it cleared, he was gone. Only the dunes remained, endless and empty. Nymeria stood there a long while, the coin cold in her hand. At last, she slipped it into her pouch and turned her horse toward the horizon. The desert was quiet again, yet she could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes watched from the shifting sands. Somewhere beneath that endless waste, a ruin lay buried, its walls carved with the faces of gods long forgotten, and deep within it, beneath stone and dust, something still shimmered faintly in the dark. The gift of the desert was not finished with them, not yet. For weeks after her encounter among the dunes, Nymeria wandered the southern reaches of Dorne, restless as the wind that haunted the canyons. She could not banish the image of the faceless man, his eyes shadowed, his face shifting like water. Every time she closed her own, she saw the golden dust swirling around him, swallowing his form until he was less man than memory. The coin lay heavy in her pouch. Some nights, when the desert was quiet and the stars burned bright, she would take it out and turn it in her hand. It never grew warm, no matter how long she held it. Cold as Bravosi steel, and twice as unforgiving. The orphans of the Greenblood spoke of omens, dreams of faceless shadows wandering the riverbanks, of water turning to glass under the moon. Nymeria listened but said nothing. She felt the desert shifting, as if some unseen presence moved beneath the sands. The air grew heavy, the nights longer. Even the wind carried whispers that were not its own. One evening, she found herself in Vythe, the small sun-blasted holdfast of House Vythe, perched on the edge of the river. Its lord, Ser Eric Vythe, received her with guarded courtesy. "Nymeria Sand," he said, pouring her a goblet of sour red wine. "You walk the desert like a ghost these days. The traders whisper your name, say you hunt shadows." She drank, her eyes never leaving his. "Perhaps I do. The shadows are restless." Ser Eric gave a short laugh, though his gaze flickered uneasily. "Aye, there are strange tales from the east. A caravan vanished near the dunes of Norvos. The sand swallowed them whole, or so the survivors claim. And they say the wind there moans like a dying man." Nymeria's hand stilled upon the table. "The dunes of Norvos? That's near the ruins." "Aye," said the knight. "No one goes near them now. The very air burns. I sent men to search for the lost traders. None returned." Nymeria rose abruptly. "Then I will go." "Alone?" His tone was incredulous. "That is folly. Whatever haunts that place is beyond steel or prayer." "I've faced worse," she said, setting down her cup. "If it's what I think it is, it won't rest until I return." Ser Eric watched her go with pity in his eyes. "Then may the stranger walk beside you, Sand." By dawn, she was already on the road east, her horse laden with water and salted meat. The sky was pale and hard as glass, the horizon blurred by heat. She rode without pause, following the river until even its trickle faded into dry stone. 2 days into the journey, she found the first sign of what she sought. The sand bore no tracks of men or beast, yet the surface was etched with strange spirals, as if the wind had carved them with intent. At night, she awoke to the sound of whispering. It came from the dunes themselves, a soft hiss, endless and patient. When she looked up, the stars seemed dimmer than before. On the third morning, she reached the edge of the Norvos dunes. The air shimmered, heavy with heat and dust. Ahead rose the ruins, the same she had entered weeks before, though now half buried and changed. The statue of the blindfolded woman still stood, but cracks veined her marble face, and golden dust oozed faintly from the fissures like blood. Nemera dismounted and approached on foot. The silence was suffocating. Even her own footsteps seemed swallowed by the sand. When she reached the statue, she knelt and touched the base. The stone was warm, pulsing faintly, as though something beneath still breathed. She descended the stair once more. The air below was cool and thick. The lantern she carried flickered weakly, its flame dimmed by unseen drafts. The great chamber lay just as she remembered. The carved faces on the walls, the altar at its heart. Yet something was wrong. The faces were no longer still. Their stone eyes seemed to follow her. Then she heard it. A voice, soft, familiar. Nemera. She froze. It came again, stronger. Nemera Sand. Her heart pounded. She turned toward the altar. A figure stood there, cloaked and hooded. His voice was unmistakable. You came back. She swallowed hard. I thought you were dead. He stepped forward, and the light fell upon his face, or what was left of it. His features shifted like ripples in water, half a dozen faces flickering and fading. Sometimes she saw the faceless man she knew, other times strangers, and once for an instant, her father's. I am not dead, he said softly. Not yet, but neither am I what I was. What happened to you? She whispered. The gift lingers, he said. When you shattered the vial, it bound itself to me. The many-faced god accepted the offering, but the dust had its own will. I am caught between faces, between lives. She took a step closer despite the fear twisting in her gut. Then let me help you. He shook his head slowly. There is no help for what I have become. But there is still a task unfinished. The gift cannot remain here. The sands remember, and soon the desert will wake. The desert? He raised his hand. Sand trickled from his fingers, glowing faintly gold. The alchemist's soul lingers in every grain. He calls to me, he calls to it. If he rises again, not even the gods will silence him. Nemera's breath caught. Then what must be done? Bury it deeper, he said. Seal this place forever. Before she could reply, a tremor shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. The carved faces seemed to groan. From the altar rose a pale mist, forming a shape that twisted and writhed. The alchemist's laughter filled the chamber. Did you think death could hold me? The faceless man stepped forward, his dagger gleaming. You belong to the many-faced god. I belong to no one, the voice roared. I am the desert now. The sand erupted around them, rising in a storm. Nemera was thrown to the ground. Through the chaos, she saw the faceless man advance, his cloak whipping like smoke. The two figures met, light against shadow, gold against black. When the storm subsided, silence returned. The chamber was empty. Only the altar remained, its surface cracked and glowing faintly with golden veins. Jaqen, she whispered, though she had never known if that was his name. No answer came. She climbed the stairs again, her limbs trembling. When she emerged, the sun was setting. The desert stretched endless and still, yet she felt its pulse beneath her feet, deep and slow. She turned once more toward the ruins. The statue's blindfolded face had crumbled completely, leaving only hollow eyes that stared toward the horizon. Nemera mounted her horse and rode west, the wind rising behind her. That night, beneath the stars, she dreamt of the faceless man standing at the edge of the desert, his face dissolving into 1,000 others. His voice echoed softly in her mind. All men must serve. All gifts must return. When she woke, her hands were covered in a fine layer of golden dust. She brushed it away, but it clung stubbornly, glimmering faintly in the dawn light, like the memory of something that refused to be forgotten. Nemera rode westward until the sands turned to stone and the wind carried the scent of salt once more. Behind her, the desert shimmered with the cruel light of dawn, and she dared not look back for fear that she might see that shifting storm of gold rising again from the dunes. Her horse's hooves beat a weary rhythm upon the parched earth. Sleep fled from her, for when she closed her eyes, she saw faces swimming before her, dozens of them, fading one into another. The faceless man's visage lingered most clearly, calm, distant, and changing still, as though the desert had claimed his flesh, but not his memory. By the time she reached the Greenblood, the river was low, and the villages along its banks had grown quiet. The orphans of the Greenblood moved through their camps in silence, their painted boats tethered like sleeping beasts. They looked upon her as one might look upon a ghost. An old woman stepped forward, the same who had once warned her not to return to the dunes. "You have seen the dust again," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. Nemera dismounted slowly. "Yes." "And the man?" She hesitated. "Gone." The old woman's eyes clouded. "Then the desert will not rest. The dust has tasted blood now. It will hunger for more." Nemera frowned. "How can dust hunger?" "It was born of fire," the woman murmured. "Fire remembers. Fire devours." The words sent a chill through Nemera's veins despite the heat. She handed the woman a small pouch of coins. "I need supplies, water, food, and a fresh horse. I ride for Sunspear." The old woman bowed her head. "Take what you need, daughter of the sand. But know this, the desert always takes back what is owed." That night, as Nemera rested in the shade of a riverboat, the sky above Dorne grew strange. The stars dimmed, swallowed by clouds that glowed faintly gold. Lightning flickered on the horizon, though no thunder followed. The air itself seemed to hum. The next morning, a rider came from Sunspear, a lean man in Martell livery, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. He dismounted before Nemera with a grim face. "Lady Nemera Sand?" She nodded warily. "The prince sends word. There has been a storm over the Vythe dunes. The wind carried gold dust for 3 days and nights. Those who breathed it, they changed." "Changed how?" she demanded. The rider swallowed. "Their faces, my lady. Their faces are gone." Her heart stilled. "Gone? Smooth as glass," he whispered, "like they were never born at all." Nemera closed her eyes. The gift had returned. The faceless man's warning echoed within her mind. The desert will wake. She left before the sun rose again. The rider offered to accompany her, but she refused. This was her burden alone. She rode hard, cutting across the sand, her cloak drawn tight against the wind. By the time she reached the outskirts of Sunspear, the air was thick with unease. Crowds had gathered before the palace gates. Soldiers barred the entrance, their faces pale beneath their helms. Nemera pushed through until she saw Captain Ordos, his armor dulled by dust. "Nemera," he said, relief and dread mingling in his tone. "You've returned. The prince, he's taken ill. Something unnatural has spread through the keep." "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "He dreams while waking, speaks in tongues we cannot understand. His maester says his skin burns cold, and when the light touches him, It shimmers. Without waiting, she strode past him. The guards made no move to stop her. Inside the Tower of the Sun, the air reeked of herbs and fear. She found Prince Doran lying upon his bed, his eyes open yet unfocused. His hands trembled as though chilled, though sweat glistened upon his brow. "Nymeria," he rasped. "You brought this?" Her throat tightened. "No, my prince, it followed me." His eyes, dark and sharp even in sickness, fixed upon her. "You opened something that was meant to remain buried. I tried to seal it," she said. But Doran's gaze drifted past her to the window where the sunlight streamed through. In its glow, motes of golden dust danced in the air. "Do you see them?" he whispered. "They are beautiful." Nymeria turned. The light seemed alive, shifting in strange patterns, and within it, faces, dozens of them, men and women, their mouths open in silent screams. She seized a cloth and tore it from the bed, covering the window. The motes scattered like sparks. "We need to burn this place," she said. Ordos stepped into the chamber, alarmed. "Burn Sunspear? If we don't, it will spread," she said fiercely. "The desert's curse is here now. Every breath brings it closer." The captain hesitated. "The prince will never allow it." "He won't have to," Nymeria muttered. "He's already part of it." Doran's body began to shake violently. His skin shimmered, golden veins spreading beneath the surface like molten fire. Nymeria drew her dagger, though she did not know what she meant to do. The faceless man's voice returned to her, quiet and unrelenting. "All gifts must return." Her hand trembled. Then she drove the dagger into the wooden floor beside the bed. "Forgive me," she whispered. She seized the prince's hand and pressed the black iron coin into his palm. The moment his skin touched it, the light dimmed. The golden glow receded from his flesh, leaving him pale and still. Ordos stared in disbelief. "What did you do?" "I gave it back," she said hoarsely. The prince did not stir, but his breathing eased. The coin remained clutched in his hand, its surface no longer cold but faintly warm. Nymeria stood and turned toward the window. Outside, the storm had passed. The golden haze was gone. Yet she knew it was not the end. The desert kept its promises. She left Sunspear before nightfall. Word spread quickly through the city that the bastard of Dorne had fled again, this time without farewell. None saw her go save one of the palace servants, who swore he heard her speaking softly to herself as she rode away. "Freedom bought with death is no freedom at all," she had said. She rode toward the sea, where the cliffs of Dorne met the crashing waves. There she dismounted and stood upon the rocks, staring at the horizon where the sun sank into fire. The wind caught her hair and flung it across her face, and for a moment she thought she heard laughter in it, a familiar voice fading into the waves. The faceless man's face appeared in her mind once more, shifting and dissolving, until she could no longer tell whether it belonged to him, to the alchemist, or to herself. She reached into her pouch and drew out a handful of sand. It shimmered faintly in the dying light. With a slow breath, she opened her hand and let it fall into the sea. The waves swallowed it, and the light went out. But far beneath the surface, where no sun ever reached, the grains of golden dust settled upon the ocean floor, and there, in the dark, they began to stir once more. The sea carried Nymeria east for many days. She left Dorne behind aboard a small Braavosi ship called the Silver Whisper, crewed by merchants and smugglers whose tongues were as sharp as their knives. None dared speak much to her after the first night. Something in her eyes told them she had stared too long into things best forgotten. She kept to herself on deck, wrapped in a heavy cloak, even when the air grew warm. The salt wind stung her face, and the endless sound of waves was a comfort, for it drowned the whispers that still lingered in her thoughts. Each night, she dreamt of the desert, the golden dust rising like smoke, the shifting faces in the wind, and the voice of the faceless man calling her name from beneath the sands. Sometimes she woke gasping, clutching at the dagger beside her bunk. When they reached Braavos, dawn was breaking. The city rose from the mist, a labyrinth of stone and shadow, its 1,000 bridges gleaming with dew. Towering above it all stood the Titan, its fiery eyes blazing as if to judge every soul who entered the lagoon. Nymeria stood at the prow as they passed beneath its shadow. "The city of masks," she murmured. "Fitting." The captain, a narrow-faced Braavosi with a missing ear, glanced her way. "You've been here before." "No," she said, "but I've met one who was born here." He grunted. "Then you know enough to keep your head down. Braavos remembers everything, even what it pretends to forget." She stepped ashore as the sun climbed higher, casting the canals in shades of bronze and gold. The city was alive with sound, bells tolling from distant towers, merchants hawking their wares, the slap of oars against water. Yet beneath it all was another rhythm, softer but unrelenting, the pulse of secrets. Her path led her through the ragman's harbor and into the narrow streets beyond. It was not hard to find what she sought. All roads in Braavos, if one walked long enough in silence, led eventually to the same place, the Isle of the Gods. There, hidden behind white walls and shaded courtyards, stood the House of Black and White. Its doors were carved from ebony and ivory, one half light, the other dark. Nymeria stopped before them, her heart quickening. She felt a weight pressing upon her shoulders, not fear, but the sense that every step from this point forward would carry her deeper into a place where truth and death were one. She raised a hand to knock, but before her knuckles touched the wood, the door opened soundlessly. A girl stood there, barefoot, her face calm and unreadable. "You carry something that is not yours," she said in the soft, measured tones of Braavos. Nymeria froze. "I don't know what you mean." The girl's eyes flicked toward her satchel. "The many-faced god does." From within the bag, the faintest glow pulsed, soft, golden, like a heartbeat. Nymeria's fingers trembled as she drew out the coin she had taken from Prince Doran's lifeless hand. Its surface was warm now, and faint veins of light ran across it like cracks in the night. "I brought it back," Nymeria said. "It followed me. It wouldn't stay buried." The girl stepped aside. "Then you must offer it again." Inside, the temple was silent as the grave. Shadows clung to the walls like living things. At the heart of the hall stood a pool of still black water. Faces, hundreds of them, were carved upon the pillars that ringed it, their features blurred by time. Nymeria approached the pool. The air grew cold around her. "Leave the coin," said the girl, "and speak the truth of it." Nymeria knelt beside the water. She set the coin upon the stone edge, its faint light flickering in the reflection. "It was found in the desert," she said quietly. "A relic of the alchemists. It grants no freedom, only hunger. It takes faces, devours them. The man who sought it is gone, and the sands are cursed." The girl's voice was soft. "And yet you brought it here." "I had no choice," Nymeria whispered. "It would not let me go." For a long time, the girl said nothing. Then she knelt beside her and touched the coin. "Nothing that lives is free of its master. You think the gift belongs to the sands, but it was born from fire, and fire is not so easily contained." The coin began to sink into the stone as though melting. A faint hiss filled the hall, and the smell of scorched metal rose. When the light faded, the girl looked up at her. "You have walked far, Nymeria Sand. The many-faced god is not ungrateful. You brought back what another sought to steal." "Then it's done?" Nymeria asked. The girl's expression did not change. "Nothing is ever done. But this face of the gift rests again." Nymeria's breath left her in a shudder. The weight she had carried for so long seemed to lift, though only slightly. And the man, the one who took the dust into himself? The girl's eyes glinted faintly. "He serves now. In the Hall of Faces, every whisper has a place. You mean he's dead?" "Dead?" The girl almost smiled. "He is no one." The air in the temple stirred. Somewhere in the darkness, Nymeria heard the faintest echo of footsteps, soft, measured, and familiar. A shadow moved near the pool's edge, just beyond the reach of light. For an instant, she saw him, the faceless man, his features calm, his eyes endless. Then the shadow vanished. Nymeria bowed her head. "Then my task is ended." The girl tilted her head. "Not yet. The desert remembers you. It will call again. When it does, you will know the price of your freedom." Nymeria stood, her hand tightening on her spear. "If it calls, I will answer." The girl smiled faintly. "That is all the many-faced god asks." When Nymeria stepped out into the pale light of morning, Braavos lay quiet beneath a veil of mist. The sea lapped gently against the stones. She turned once, looking back at the house of black and white. Its doors were closed again, as though they had never opened. She walked away through the waking city, her cloak drawn tight around her shoulders. The weight of the past still clung to her, but it no longer suffocated. As she reached the harbor, a gust of wind caught her hair, and she thought she smelled the desert on it. Hot, dry, and faintly metallic, like blood upon sand. She looked east, toward the unseen lands beyond the narrow sea. The dawn light caught the water, and for an instant, it shimmered gold. Then the light faded, and the world was only sea and sky once more. Yet somewhere far beneath the dunes of Dorne, beneath stone and ruin, a pulse still beat in the buried darkness, a faint shimmer of gold, patient and eternal, waiting for the wind to wake it again. Braavos soon fell behind her like a dream, fading with the dawn. For a time, Nymeria remained among the narrow streets and mist-covered bridges, but rest eluded her. The House of Black and White had accepted the cursed coin, yet something within her remained unsettled. The nights were filled with uneasy silence. She would wake before sunrise and find her breath fogging in the air, though the weather was mild. Always, she felt the faint weight of unseen eyes upon her. At last, she chose to leave the city. The faceless men were not her people, nor was this place of whispering canals her home. The desert called her still, the scent of heat and dust that had seeped into her soul. So she sold her horse and bought passage upon a merchant galley bound for Old Town, where the maesters of the citadel studied all manner of forbidden things. Perhaps there she would learn whether the curse truly slept or merely waited. The voyage was long and the sea restless. Gray waves rose like mountains beneath a sky that seemed too vast to bear. Nymeria spent the days upon the deck, gazing west toward the horizon, her mind turning over old memories. She remembered her father's smile, the sound of the faceless man's calm voice, the glow of the golden dust as it devoured the alchemist's face. The world was full of gods, she thought, but none so cruel as those who granted men what they desired most. They reached Old Town after 14 days at sea. The city was unlike Sunspear, green where Dorne was gold, soft where the desert was hard. The great tower of the high tower loomed above the harbor like a pale spear piercing the clouds. Beneath its shadow stretched the maze of streets leading to the citadel itself. Nymeria found lodging at a modest inn overlooking the river. She spent her first morning wandering the city, keeping her hood drawn. She was a stranger here, one more traveler among many, and that suited her. But when she crossed the Honeywine Bridge and looked upon the citadel's high arches and gleaming bronze lamps, she felt again that weight of unseen purpose, as if fate had drawn her here by design. She sought out an archivist known to deal in heretical texts, an old maester named Theomore. His quarters smelled of dust and ink, his eyes pale and sharp behind round spectacles. "You come from Dorne?" he asked when she gave her name. "Few of your people seek wisdom among the chains. I seek truth, not wisdom," she said. He smiled faintly. The two are rarely found together. From her cloak, she drew a small pouch of fine sand, what little she had gathered from the ruins before leaving Dorne. Even sealed, it shimmered faintly, a reminder of what she had tried to bury. "I need to know what this is." Theomore took the pouch gingerly. "Strange," he murmured, holding it toward the light. "It glows like powdered amber, yet it hums. I can feel it." He poured a grain onto his palm, then frowned. "You should not have brought this here." Nymeria's heart quickened. "You know it?" "I have read of such things." He placed the pouch upon the table and wiped his hand as though cleansing himself. "In the oldest Valyrian scrolls, records of the doom. They speak of a dust born in the fire, the ashes of men who sought to master death itself. They called it a Shira, the breath of faces. It was said to unmake the living and bind their souls to the wind." Nymeria swallowed. "Then it's Valyrian." "Perhaps older," said Theomore. "The Valyrians did not create it. They merely found it beneath the smoking ruins of their first forges. They used it to shape masks that could not decay, but they feared it too. They buried it in the farthest deserts of Essos and swore never to speak of it again. Yet it found its way to Dorne," Nymeria murmured. Theomore nodded gravely. "Knowledge travels faster than dragons. Some secrets wish to be found." He fixed her with a piercing stare. "Destroy it if you value your soul. Burn the pouch and scatter the ashes into running water. It must not linger where men can touch it." Nymeria thanked him and left, but his warning did not ease her heart. That night, in her chamber above the river, she laid the pouch upon the table and stared at it until sleep claimed her. Her dreams were full of shifting sand and whispering voices. She saw the faceless man walking across the desert, his shadow stretching behind him like a black banner. He turned to her, and his face changed. Her father's eyes, the alchemist's smile, her own reflection fading into dust. When she woke, the room was cold. The pouch lay open, the sand spilled across the table, and from the corner of the chamber came a soft, rasping breath. She reached for her dagger. The shadows stirred, and a figure stepped forward. A man, tall and hooded. His cloak was tattered from long travel, his face hidden. But she knew the shape of him, the quiet grace of his movement. "You," she whispered. He said nothing. The air between them shimmered faintly, and she smelled the desert again, the dry heat, the iron tang of dust. "I saw you die," she said, "in the ruins." "Death is not an end," he murmured, voice low and distant. "It is only another mask." She stood slowly, blade trembling in her hand. "Why follow me?" "The gift is not finished," he said. "It binds us both." The sand upon the table began to stir, rising in thin spirals. The light from the lantern flickered as if struggling to breathe. "You brought it here," he said, his eyes glinting beneath the hood. "The city of faces will fall if it is not returned." "Returned to where?" "To the sea," he said, "where even gods are drowned." The light went out. When it flared again, he was gone. Only the pouch remained, half empty. Nymera's resolve hardened. She gathered the sand, tied it tight, and left the inn before sunrise. Down at the harbor, she found a fisherman willing to take her beyond the mouth of the Honeywine for a few silver stags. The fog was thick upon the water, the kind that swallowed ships whole. When they reached open sea, she told him to wait and climbed to the prow. The waves slapped against the hull, cold and dark. She untied the pouch, her fingers numb. "Let this be the last of it," she whispered, and cast the sand into the waves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water shimmered gold where it fell, spreading outward like ink in parchment. The sea grew still, the air heavy. From the depths came a faint whisper, her name drawn out like a sigh. Nymera's breath caught. The glow sank slowly, swallowed by the deep. When it was gone, the wind rose again. The fisherman crossed himself and muttered a prayer. "It's done," she said, though her voice trembled. "Take us back." As the boat turned toward shore, she looked once more into the gray water. Far below, she thought she saw a glimmer of gold, pulsing faintly, like a heart that refused to die. And she knew, with a certainty colder than steel, that the gift of the desert could never truly be buried. It had only changed its home, from the sands of Dorne to the depths of the sea, where it would wait in silence until the world forgot again. The sea forgot nothing. Long after Nymera returned to Dorne, the waves still whispered of what had been thrown into their depths. Fishermen spoke of golden light seen beneath the surface on moonless nights, of nets that came up torn and dripping with fine glittering sand. The masters of Old Town called them fools' tales. Nymera knew better. She had tried to put the sea between herself and that cursed dust, but no distance could dull the memory. Each morning, when the first light spilled across the dunes, she felt the same unease settle over her heart, a silence too deep, too knowing. She lived for a time in a small village on the edge of the Greenblood, helping to guide traders through the shifting sands. Her hair had grown longer, her face leaner. The people there called her the woman who listens to the wind. Yet sometimes, when the wind rose, she heard more than the sigh of sand. It carried faint voices, soft, pleading, the whisper of 1,000 faces. She would wake before dawn and stare east, toward the sea she could not see, and feel its pull like a chain about her soul. One morning, as the light crept over the horizon, a rider came from the north. His horse was lathered, its breath steaming in the chill dawn. He dismounted before her hut and fell to one knee, gasping. "You are Nymera Sand?" he asked. She studied him. The man was Dornish, his cloak torn, his eyes wild. "I was," she said, "once." He looked up at her with desperation. "Then you must come. The Prince of Dorne calls for you." Her blood went cold. "Prince Doran?" The rider shook his head. "No, Prince Trystane, your kinsman." Nymera stared at him, uncertain whether to laugh or curse. "And why would Trystane Martell seek me?" "Because the sea glows, my lady," he whispered. "The harbor at Planky Town burns with gold." Within the hour, she was riding north with him. They reached Planky Town by dusk. The scent of salt and rotting fish filled the air, but beneath it was something stranger, the faint metallic tang she remembered from the desert. Crowds had gathered along the docks, whispering and pointing toward the water. There, in the dark, the waves shimmered faintly gold. Nymeria forced her way through. The sight struck her like a blow. The sea itself was breathing. Each wave rose and fell in time with a pulse of light beneath the surface. She felt her knees weaken. "It followed me," she murmured. Trystane Martell stood beside her, older now but still sharp-eyed. "So it seems," he said grimly. "When the fisherman brought word, I thought it a trick of the sun, but it grows stronger each night. My maesters cannot explain it." Nymeria tore her gaze from the sea. "Has anyone gone into the water?" He hesitated. "Some of the fools who live along the coast. None have returned." She closed her eyes. The gift of the desert was stirring again. The sea had not tamed it. It had merely fed it new life. That night, Trystane offered her shelter in his camp, but sleep was a stranger to her. She sat beside the water, the waves lapping at her boots, and thought of the faceless man. His voice came to her as clear as the night she had first met him. The desert never gives without taking. She rose before dawn and walked to the edge of the pier, where the golden light was brightest. A shape moved beneath the surface, slow, vast, and shifting. For a heartbeat, it seemed to have a face. Her heart thundered. "What do you want?" she whispered. The sea answered with a sound like a sigh. When she turned, a figure stood at the end of the pier, cloaked, hooded, unmoving. Her hand went to the dagger at her belt. "You," she said. The figure stepped forward. In the half-light, she saw the glint of a mask, smooth and featureless. "You cannot run from what you are bound to," the voice said. The tone was calm, cold, and familiar. Too familiar. "Faceless one," she said bitterly. "I buried you in sand, drowned you in salt. Must I do it again?" He tilted his head. "You buried a shadow, not the man. The gift does not die. It changes its bearer." The light on the water flared. The waves began to churn. Nymeria stumbled back as a spray of gold burst upward, raining down like fire. "What is happening?" she cried. The masked figure turned toward the sea. "The many-faced god reclaims his due. The dust you cast into the waves has taken form. It hungers for faces." A shape rose from the water, tall as a ship's mast, gleaming with molten light. It had no form at first, only a writhing mass of faces that melted and reformed in an endless cycle. The voices of the drowned echoed from within it. Nymeria's heart froze. "What do we do?" "There is only one way," said the faceless man. "It must be given a face to wear, a true one, yours." She stared at him in horror. "Mine? You carried it from the sands to the sea," he said. "You are its bridge. Only by binding it to you can it sleep again." She drew her dagger. "You would have me die for it." His mask gleamed faintly in the light. "Not die. Change." The creature roared, and the pier shuddered. The faceless man reached for her hand. "There is no other way." Nymeria hesitated only a breath before she thrust her dagger through his chest. He staggered, but did not fall. The mask cracked, revealing the faint shimmer of shifting flesh beneath. "You cannot kill death," he whispered. "Then you'll forgive me for trying." She tore the mask from his face. For an instant, she saw his true features. Pale, scarred, his eyes filled with sorrow. Then the light consumed him. The golden creature shrieked, drawn to him like fire to oil. Both were swallowed in the glow. When it faded, the sea was calm again. Nymeria stood alone on the pier, the dagger slick with blood and salt. The golden light had vanished. Only dark water remained, lapping quietly against the wood. She sank to her knees, her breath ragged. "It's done," she whispered. "Please, let it be done." But when she lifted her hand, she saw that her skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, threads of gold beneath the surface, pulsing like veins of living fire. Her reflection stared back from the water, not her face, but another's, the faceless man's. She dropped the dagger into the sea and turned away. Behind her, the waves murmured like a promise. By dawn, the people of Plankytown found the pier empty. The sea was quiet once more, and no trace of gold remained. Only the faint echo of laughter carried on the wind, soft, hollow, and fading. And somewhere, far out upon the open water, a small boat drifted aimlessly. Within it sat a figure cloaked in brown, hood drawn low. The sunlight caught the shimmer beneath her skin, turning her hands to gold. She raised her head, her face calm, unrecognizable, and whispered to the wind in a voice that was no longer her own. "All men must serve. All gifts must return." The morning after the sea turned quiet, the world felt wrong. The gulls that haunted Plankytown did not cry. The water lay still as black glass, and the air hung heavy with salt and silence. Those who woke early swore they smelled something like burnt metal, though no fires burned along the coast. By midday, sailors began to whisper that the tide had stopped. The river mouths that fed the harbor lay still. No current moved, no ripple stirred. Old men who had spent their lives on the water grew pale and crossed themselves. Something was holding the sea in its breath. In the evening, a boy mending nets by the pier looked up and saw a small boat drifting out of the mist. Its sail hung limp, its oars untouched. When it struck the pilings, the boy called for the harbor master. They found a single figure aboard, cloaked and hooded, sitting upright as if merely resting. The body was light when they lifted it, but cold, too cold for any living thing. The harbor master pushed back the hood and stepped away in shock. The woman's face was smooth and pale, her eyes half open and gleaming with faint gold. She was neither dead nor alive. Her chest did not rise, yet her lips seemed on the verge of speech. They brought her to the sept at the edge of town, laying her upon a stone table while the septa prayed over her. But the prayers faltered when the gold beneath her skin began to glow softly in the candlelight. Word traveled fast. By the next dawn, Prince Tristane's men had arrived, their banners snapping in the wind. He came himself, silent and grim, to see the woman who had once been Nymeria Sand. She looked the same and not the same. Her hair, once black as midnight, shone now with streaks of bronze. The faint shimmer of gold beneath her skin pulsed like the heartbeat of some sleeping creature. Tristane ordered all others from the room and stood beside her, watching. "I told you to stay away from the sea," he said softly. "I told you to rest." Her eyes opened. The prince stepped back, his hand flying to his dagger. The glow in her eyes faded, and she looked at him with a strange, distant calm. "Tristane," she said. Her voice was low and even, carrying a hollow echo. He lowered the blade. "You're alive." "Am I?" she asked. "The sea took me. The desert claimed me first, and now the sea has finished the task." He searched her face, but there was no warmth in it, only stillness. "What happened?" he demanded. She looked past him toward the window where the faintest shimmer of gold still clung to the horizon. "It has taken a new shape," she murmured. "It lives in me now. The gift cannot die." Tristane clenched his fists. "Then we'll call the Meisters. They'll find a cure." "No cure," she said sharply, and for a heartbeat her voice became two voices, one hers and one not. "It was meant to rest, not to end. You cannot unmake a god's design." He stared at her, chilled to the bone. "A god's design?" She rose from the table, her movements fluid, soundless. The candle flames bent toward her as she passed. "The many-faced God does not forget his servants," she said. "The faceless man's task was unfinished. It falls to me now." "Nymeria," Trystane said, reaching for her arm. "You are no priest, no killer. You are my kin." Her gaze met his, and he fell silent. There was something in those eyes that did not belong to her, a vast and patient emptiness. "I was Nymeria Sand," she said, "but names are for the living." The gold light in her skin brightened, and the candles guttered out. When they flared again, she was gone. By nightfall, sailors began to vanish from Planky Town. A fisherman who saw one of them vanish swore he saw the sea open like a mouth and swallow the man whole. "The water took his face," he said, trembling. "It took his face and left his scream." Trystane sent ravens to Sunspear and to Old Town, but none returned. The wind that rose the next morning blew from the east, hot and dry, carrying sand across the water. Those who tasted it said it burned their tongues with salt and ash. In the days that followed, sightings of the woman spread. Some said she was seen walking the beaches at night, her cloak trailing in the surf, her face hidden by a hood. Others swore they met her inland, near the ruins where the desert first swallowed the gift. They said her eyes were molten gold, and her voice could still the wind. And everywhere she went, the same thing followed. Silence, then whispers, then the faint shimmer of golden dust in the air. In Sunspear, Prince Trystane locked himself in the Tower of the Sun and refused all counsel. "We are haunted," he told his maester, "not by ghosts, but by what we tried to bury. The desert is awake again." South of the Greenblood, the orphans began to sing strange hymns. "The Lady of Dust walks once more," they cried. "The faces are hungry." And in the ruined watchtower where Nymeria had first met the faceless man, the sands began to move. A hand, pale and smooth as glass, pushed free from beneath the dune. Then another, then a face, blank, featureless and gleaming faintly gold. It rose from the sand like a statue come to life, turned its empty gaze toward the horizon, and began to walk. Far away, on a lonely stretch of coast, Nymeria stood watching the sea. Her cloak billowed around her, though no wind blew. She felt the pulse of the gift within her, a slow, steady rhythm that matched the beat of the waves. It was no longer pain, it was power. When she spoke, her voice carried across the water, low and resonant. "The desert and the sea are one," she said. "Sand and salt, dust and blood, all things return to their beginning." She looked to the horizon, where the faint outline of a ship appeared, its sails dark against the dying sun. A Braavosi vessel. She knew its purpose before it drew near. The faceless men had sent another. She smiled faintly beneath her hood. "Let them come," she whispered. "The gift is mine now." The tide surged, golden light spilling from the waves. The ship slowed, its sails snapping in sudden wind. On the shore, Nymeria's eyes gleamed brighter than the sea. Far beneath the surface, the sand stirred once more, spreading outward like veins of fire through the dark water. The gift of the desert had found its voice again, and it sang not of death, but of dominion. And as the sun fell below the waves, the last light upon the water turned to gold. Night lay heavy over the sea, dark as spilled ink. The Braavosi ship drew nearer to shore, its lanterns glowing faintly through the mist. The crew worked in uneasy silence, for they had been warned of what awaited them in Dorne. The man who stood at the prow, cloaked in gray and silver, did not fear the tales. His name was Sarion, a servant of the many-faced god, and he had come to claim what his order had lost. The gift of the desert had escaped its temple twice, and each time it had left a trail of ruin. The Faceless men could not allow such power to dwell in mortal hands. Sarion had been trained from birth to serve death itself. Yet as the wind shifted and carried the scent of heat and dust across the water, even he felt a stir of unease. "Land ahead," the helmsman called. The outline of the Dornish coast rose before them, barren cliffs, jagged and pale under the stars. At their base stretched a narrow shore where the tide whispered softly against the sand. Sarion stepped into the waiting skiff without a word. 2 oarsmen rowed him to land, their faces drawn and silent. When the keel struck the shallows, he climbed out and turned toward the dunes. She was waiting for him. Nymeria stood at the water's edge, her cloak trailing in the surf. The hood was drawn low, but he could see the faint shimmer of gold beneath the fabric. When she lifted her head, the light of the moon caught her eyes, and they burned like molten metal. "So," she said softly, "the House of Black and White remembers me." "The many-faced god remembers all who flee his service," Sarion replied. His voice was calm, but his hand rested lightly on the hilt of the dagger at his belt. "You were not meant to carry the gift." Nymeria smiled faintly. "It chose me." "No," he said. "It consumed you." She stepped forward, and the waves drew back from her feet as though in fear. "Is there a difference?" Sarion studied her. The air around her shimmered with heat, though the night was cool. He saw the faint outlines of faces moving beneath her skin, half-formed, fleeting, as though the dust within her could not decide which shape to wear. "Give it back," he said. "End this before it spreads." Her laughter was soft and low, carried away by the wind. "End it? You do not understand, Bravosi. The gift is not a curse. It is freedom. It takes away the falsehood of flesh and leaves only truth." "Truth?" Sarion's tone sharpened. "You speak with the arrogance of those who mistake power for purpose." She tilted her head. "And you speak like a man who has never questioned his god." "The many-faced god does not require questions," he said. "Only service." "Then you are a slave," Nymeria said, her voice rising. "A chained soul wrapped in borrowed skin. I have seen what lies beyond your masks. You serve not death, but fear." For a moment, neither moved. The waves hissed softly between them. Then Sarion drew his dagger. Its blade gleamed darkly, as though forged from shadow itself. "The gift must be sealed," he said. "If it cannot be returned, it must be ended, even if that means ending you." Nymeria's smile faded. "Then come and try." The sand erupted beneath their feet as they met. Sarion moved like water, his dagger flashing in the moonlight. Nymeria's hands rose, and the air itself bent around her, swirling with grains of gold. The dagger struck, but she dissolved into dust, reforming behind him in a shimmer of light. She struck, her palm glowing, and the impact sent him sprawling into the surf. The water hissed where it touched her skin. Sarion rose, coughing, his dagger still in hand. "You are nothing but a shadow," he said through clenched teeth. "Perhaps," she murmured, "but shadows live longer than men." She raised her hands again, and the sea answered her call. Golden light burst from the waves, coiling around her like a crown. Faces formed within it, faces of the dead, of those the dust had claimed. Their voices murmured in unison, 1,000 whispers blending into one. Sarion pressed his palm to the dagger's hilt and whispered an ancient prayer. Valar Morghulis. The blade darkened until it seemed to drink the light. He hurled it toward her, and it flew straight and true. The dagger struck her chest. For a heartbeat, all was still. Then the glow flared so bright it turned night into day. The sea roared, and the dunes trembled. Sarion shielded his eyes as the light consumed her. When it faded, Nymeria was gone. Only a circle of glass remained where the sand had melted, still warm beneath his feet. The dagger lay at its center, its blade cracked and blackened. Sarion knelt, breathing hard. The air smelled of salt and iron. For a moment he thought the task was done. Then he heard it, the faint sound of the tide whispering not in water, but in words. He turned toward the sea. The waves gleamed faintly gold once more. From beneath the surface a voice spoke. All men must serve. The light spread outward, slow and steady, until it touched the horizon. Sarion backed away, horror dawning in his eyes. The gift was not gone. It had simply found another vessel, the sea itself. He fled the shore before dawn, leaving the broken dagger where it lay. When the sun rose, the people of Planky Town saw the sea glitter with golden light once more. Fish floated dead upon the surface, their scales gleaming like coins. Those who ventured too close swore the water whispered their names. In Sunspear, ravens brought word of the phenomenon. Prince Trystane ordered the harbor sealed, and the ships burned. No man sails east, he commanded. Let the sea keep its secret. But secrets, like the tide, never rest. Years passed, and sailors began to speak of a shining mist that drifted across the narrow sea, swallowing ships whole. Those who returned spoke of a woman's voice calling from the water, promising release from the burden of their faces. Some claimed to have seen her standing upon the waves, cloaked in gold, her eyes burning like molten fire. Whether it was Nymeria Sand, the spirit of the faceless man, or the many-faced god himself, none could say. But the Bravosi who heard these tales whispered only one truth among themselves. The gift of the desert had crossed the sea, and no wall of stone or prayer of man would hold it back forever. And somewhere, in the depths where sunlight could not reach, the dust stirred again, golden, eternal, waiting for the day when the world would forget its lesson and call it by name once more. The years that followed were called the Quiet Tides, though there was little quiet in them. The sea beyond Dorne remained strange. Sailors who dared cross the narrow sea told of nights when the water glowed faintly beneath their hulls, golden as molten coin. Some said it was the work of fireworms rising from the deep. Others claimed it was the sea's revenge for the ships that had drowned in her embrace. The maesters, ever faithful to reason, called it phosphor and wrote their explanations in ink and certainty. But the small folk whispered a different tale, a tale of a woman who had been swallowed by the sea and risen again as its voice. They said she called from the mist, offering freedom from all faces, from all names. And when the waves stilled to listen, men forgot who they were and walked willingly into the water. Trystane Martell, older now and half-crippled by gout, forbade any Dornish ship from sailing past the stepstones. The sea is poisoned, he declared to his court. Let others test its hunger. Yet even he could not keep the stories from spreading. In Braavos, the House of Black and White grew restless. The acolytes whispered that the sea itself had become a servant of their god. The gift has gone where even death cannot follow, said one. It walks the world without flesh. Others disagreed. They said the gift had betrayed them, that it had become a mockery of the many-faced god, a false voice speaking in the name of death, but serving only hunger. And so the faceless men sent another. He called himself Rane, a man young enough to be reckless, old enough to have learned that recklessness and courage were rarely the same thing. He bore no coin, no mark. Only the words of the kindly man burned into his memory. What has been given must be reclaimed. All faces returned to the house. When his ship made port at Sunspear, he went ashore alone. Dorne's sun was blinding after Braavos mists. He wore the face of a sellsword from the Reach, ordinary, forgettable. For weeks he traveled south, asking questions among fishermen and wanderers, tracing each whisper back to the shore where Nymeria sand had vanished. He reached Planky Town on a moonless night. The harbor was silent. No waves broke. No gulls cried. The sea looked like black glass, smooth and still. Rani knelt, touching the water. It was cold, colder than any sea should be. He stood, scanning the horizon. For a moment, he thought he saw something move beneath the surface, a flicker of gold. But when he looked again, there was nothing. He camped among the dunes, keeping his dagger close. At dawn, he woke to the sound of footsteps. She stood there, just beyond the ridge. Nymeria. Her cloak was the color of the desert at sunset, her hair pale now, streaked with gold. Her eyes caught the rising sun and burned like twin embers. "You are far from Braavos," she said. "I go where I am sent." "Sent to kill me?" Rani did not answer. Nymeria smiled faintly. "They never learn." She walked toward him, her feet leaving no prints in the sand. "Do you know what your house serves, Braavosi? You think you worship death, but death is only the shadow cast by life. The gift is neither. It is the silence between them." He raised his dagger. "You speak blasphemy." "I speak truth." She gestured toward the sea. "Look upon it. Tell me what God could make something so vast and claim to own it." Rain's jaw tightened. "You've been corrupted. The dust remembers," she interrupted. "Every soul it touches, every face it devours. It has learned what your God hides, that the many-faced one is not the master of death. He is its prisoner." The air shimmered. Sand lifted from the ground, swirling around her in a golden storm. "The world has forgotten its beginnings, Braavosi. Before Valeria's fire, before your temples, there was the desert. Endless, empty, unbound. The first freedom was silence. The dust only seeks to return to it." Rane steadied his breath. "Then I will silence it myself." He lunged, swift as shadow, his blade cutting the air between them. But she was faster. The sand exploded upward, blinding him. When he struck, his dagger met only air. "Fool," she whispered behind him. He turned, but her hand was already upon his chest. Pain flared white. He felt the world tilt. The dagger fell from his fingers. He stumbled, gasping, and looked down. Where her hand had touched him, his skin shimmered gold. It spread quickly, across his chest, up his throat. "What have you gifted you?" she said softly. "The same freedom I was given." He fell to his knees. The light filled him, too bright to bear. His face began to dissolve, his features melting into smoothness. His eyes burned, but he could still see her, calm, radiant, terrible. "I will not scream," he managed to say. "No," Nymeria murmured. "You will sing." The sound that left his mouth was not a scream. It was a low hum, deep and resonant, like the voice of the sea. When it faded, the sand where he had knelt turned to glass. No body remained. Nymeria looked down at the place where he had fallen. "The house sends its children, but they never understand. Death is not the end of faces. It is their beginning." She turned toward the water. The horizon was aflame with dawn, and the sea glowed faintly beneath it, golden and alive. From that day, ships that sailed too close to Dorne's coast vanished. Some said they saw a woman standing upon the waves, her cloak billowing like storm clouds. Her voice would rise above the roar of the surf, low, beckoning, filled with sorrow. A few who returned spoke of her eyes, brighter than the sun, and the faces that drifted behind her in the water, the faces of those who had drowned, each shimmering faintly with light. She did not kill them, they said. She welcomed them. The Bravosi stopped sending their assassins. The House of Black and White closed its doors for 7 days and nights, its pools dark and still. When at last the kindly man spoke again, he said only this: "A face that has learned its own name cannot be taken. Let the desert keep her." And in Dorne, the sea burned quietly beneath the stars, gold by night, silver by day. The fisherfolk no longer went near it. Children were warned not to listen when the tide whispered. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, the people of Plankytown would hear her song, a voice carried from far beyond the waves, neither living nor dead, calling softly to all who had ever longed to be free of their own reflection. And the sea answered her, as it always had, with silence deeper than death. Years drifted past like the slow tide, and the tale of the Golden Sea became a song told in the taverns of Sunspear. Yet none who sang it dared go near the shore when the moon was full. The Dornish believed the sea still watched them, that the waves whispered names to those who listened too long. Trystane Martell died in his tower, heavy with age and regret, leaving behind no sons and too many secrets. After his death, the Meisters unsealed his private letters. Among them was a single parchment stained with salt. It bore no signature, only 2 words written in a delicate, foreign hand. Still here. The seal had been made with gold dust pressed into wax. Far to the east, in the free cities, the same phrase began appearing in ledgers, in the margins of prayer scrolls, even scrawled upon the walls of docks where Bravosi ships were moored. Sailors whispered that the sea was alive, that sometimes, in the dark between storms, a voice would rise above the wind, soft and knowing, asking them if they remembered their names. And when they could not answer, the waves would take them. The House of Black and White heard the rumors first. Within its halls, where silence was sacred and every sound was an intrusion, the whispers crept like the smell of burning salt. Some acolytes refused to go near the pools. Others said the water shimmered faintly now, as though gold dust lay at the bottom. The kindly man gathered the servants of the god. "A debt remains," he said. "The gift has become a thief. It gives where none should receive, and it speaks in the voice of death, though it serves another master. One of us must go." But none stepped forward. Too many had gone already, and none had returned. Only one remained unafraid, an old woman with hair white as frost and eyes the color of dull bronze. She had once been called Thea of Lys before the house took her face. Now she was simply no one. "I will go," she said. "The gift began in fire. Perhaps it must end there again." So it was that she crossed the narrow sea alone, in a ship no larger than a fishing boat, carrying nothing but a pouch of ash from the temple's sacred fires. For 7 days and nights she sailed, guided by stars that seemed dimmer than before. On the 8th, the sky turned red, and the wind died. She had reached Dorne. The water around her shimmered gold beneath the setting sun. No waves broke. The sea lay utterly still. The air was thick and warm, heavy with the scent of metal. And there she saw her. Nymeria stood upon the water as if upon glass, her cloak billowing around her though no breeze stirred. Thea's heart tightened. The woman looked untouched by time, beautiful, terrible, eternal. "You've come far," Nymeria said, her voice carrying like a whisper across the calm sea. "But you are too late. The gift is awake. Thea drew the pouch of ash from her cloak. It can still be put to rest. The many-faced god does not forget his offerings. Nymera's smile was small and sad. The many-faced god forgot himself long ago. He wears too many masks to remember which was first. Tell me, priestess, do you even know what he truly is? I know he is death. Death! Nymera's voice grew colder. Then you have learned nothing. Death is only the shadow of change. The gift was meant to free men from fear, but your god bound it with chains. You turned it into a tool for killing. I have broken those chains. Thea shook her head. You have loosed chaos. Chaos. Nymera's laughter rippled across the water. No, I have loosed truth. Look. The sea around them began to move. Faces rose beneath the surface. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, glowing faintly gold. Men, women, children. Their eyes opened, and Thea felt their gaze pierce her soul. These are the ones the sea has taken, Nymera said softly. They were lost, forgotten, nameless. But now they are free. They are dead. They are. The old woman's hand trembled. She untied the pouch of ash. Then they can rest. She flung the ash into the air. It spread like a dark cloud, swirling above the water. Thea spoke the prayer of ending, the words older than any kingdom, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. Nymera's eyes blazed. You dare offer the gift to the gift itself? The wind roared. The ash caught fire, turning to black flame that hissed where it met the golden sea. The faces screamed, a sound like breaking glass, and the water erupted upward, forming a towering wall that swallowed the sky. Thea clung to the edge of her boat as it rose and fell in the storm. Through the chaos, she saw Nymera standing calm in the midst of the flames, her arms spread wide. You cannot kill what the world needs, Nymera cried. The gift is the breath between lives. It will find another vessel. Thea's voice broke as she shouted above the wind. Then let it take me. The sea answered. The golden light surged, engulfing them both. The fire and dust mingled, and the night split open with a thunderous roar. When dawn came, there was no trace of the storm. The sea was clear and blue, as if nothing had ever happened. Fishermen who sailed that morning found a patch of water where the light danced strangely, but no gold remained. Only a few shards of blackened glass drifted in the current. In Bravos, the pool within the house of black and white turned still once more. The gold shimmer faded, leaving only darkness. The kindly man looked upon it and said, "A debt repaid." Yet not all debts end with death. Far below the surface of the calm sea, something slept. Its dreams spread outward, slow, patient, endless. Years later, a child born in Plankytown came into the world with eyes the color of burnished gold. When the midwife lifted her, she found her skin warm as sunlight and heard, faintly, the murmur of distant waves. The child did not cry. She only looked toward the sea and smiled. And when the tide came in that night, it carried no sound but a whisper, soft as breath, spoken in a voice that had once belonged to Nymera Sand. All faces return, all gifts endure. And the waves, dark and endless, replied in their slow, eternal tongue. Winter had not yet touched Dorne, but a strange chill hung over the sea. The waves rolled quieter than they once had, as if afraid of waking something that dreamed below. The stories of the gift of the desert had grown into legend, then into myth, then into a whisper told only when the wind howled against the dunes. Yet myths have a way of waiting for the world to grow careless. The child born in Plankytown, the one with eyes of molten gold, was no longer a child. Her name was Lyra Sand, and she had grown into a woman of restless purpose. The midwives said the sea had claimed her at birth. The old sailors swore they saw her walking the tide at dusk, her feet never sinking, her hair shimmering like sunlight on water. None dared cross her, for she was touched by what men did not understand. Lyra did not seek worship. She sought truth. Each night she dreamed of a desert burning under an ancient sun, and in the dream she saw faces. Some she knew, most she did not, turning to dust in the wind. A voice always followed, soft as the tide. All gifts endure. When she was 16, she found a shard of black glass washed ashore after a storm. It was smooth, cold, and faintly warm at its center, as if something within it still breathed. When she held it, the dreams grew stronger. She saw a woman standing upon the sea, her eyes bright as gold, and a hooded man kneeling before her. In her waking hours, she began to feel the same pull that had haunted Nymeria Sand long ago. The desert called to her, the ruin, the sand, the buried faces. So she went. Her mother wept and begged her to stay, but Lyra's will was iron. She traveled north, following the green blood, past the ruins of Vaith and into the lands where the sand shifted like a living thing. Travelers spoke of storms that came without wind, of pillars of light rising from the dunes, of the air itself humming like a song half remembered. Lyra rode alone, guided by her dreams. Each night the shard of black glass pulsed in her hand, faint but insistent. When she reached the place where the blind statue once stood, she found only half-buried stone and the memory of fire. The temple was gone, swallowed by the sands, but the air was alive with power. She knelt and pressed the shard into the ground. The sand stirred beneath her fingers, and golden light seeped upward, forming thin tendrils that coiled around her hands. Her pulse quickened. "Who are you?" she whispered to the wind. The answer came not in words, but in the stirring of the sand. A voice filled her mind. A woman's voice, calm and patient, with sorrow woven through every syllable. "You already know." Images flooded her vision. A faceless man walking the dunes, a young woman with a spear, an alchemist's tower collapsing in flame, and a sea that glowed gold beneath the stars. "Nymeria," Lyra breathed. The light brightened. "I am what remains of her, what remains of the gift." Lyra's heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because the gift chose you, as it chose me. You are its vessel now." Lyra wanted to flee, but her feet were buried in the sand. The light climbed her arms, warm but not burning. Beneath the warmth, she felt a heartbeat that was not her own. "I don't want it," she whispered. "No one ever does." The light surged, and the desert came alive. The dunes shifted like waves. The air filled with a low hum, and faces began to rise from the sand. Half-formed, shimmering, silent. Lyra tried to turn away, but they looked at her with hollow eyes. She saw herself reflected in every one of them. "You cannot destroy the gift," the voice said. "It is the breath between death and life. It belongs to all." "Then what am I to do?" "Guide it, balance it. The faceless men sought to chain it. I sought to free it. You must learn to hold both truths." Lyra's breath came in ragged gasps. The faces began to dissolve again, falling like dust. The light dimmed until only the shard glowed faintly in the sand. When the wind settled, she stood alone. She picked up the shard. It was no longer cold. It pulsed gently, steady as her own heart. When she looked into it, she saw her reflection fade, replaced by Nymeria's face, calm and ageless. The vision spoke once more, softer now, fading into the distance. "Remember, child of sand and sea, all things return. Even gods must rest." Then the light went out. Lyra stayed by the ruins until morning. When the sun rose, the desert was still. Yet something within her had changed. She no longer felt the weight of fear, only purpose. She turned her horse toward the sea and began the long ride home. Weeks later, she reached Planky Town again. The waves greeted her quietly, as if recognizing their kin. She walked to the edge of the water and threw the shard into the surf. It sank without a ripple. The tide rose higher that night, but not in anger. The sea glowed faintly beneath the moon, golden, gentle, and calm. For the first time in living memory, no one felt afraid. Years passed, and Lyra Sand became a legend in her own right. Some said she married and bore children. Others claimed she vanished one morning, walking into the waves without leaving a trace. What was certain was that the sea remained peaceful, the desert silent. But the world turns, and silence never lasts. In Old Town, a young Meister studying the ancient records of Valyria found a line scrawled in a forgotten manuscript. The breath of faces shall sleep until called by blood born of gold and sand. He thought it a metaphor, a relic of superstition. He copied the phrase and sealed it among his notes. That night, as he slept, a faint golden mist crept through his window. It touched his cheek, his lips, his eyes. And when he awoke, he could not remember his name. He rose, walked to the window, and looked toward the east, where the first light of dawn touched the sea. In that light, the water glimmered faintly gold once more. Far below the surface, the shard pulsed once, like a sleeping heart that had begun to dream again. And in that dream walked a woman of sand and sea, her eyes bright as the dawn, her voice neither mortal nor divine. She whispered to the waves, to the dust, to the faces that drifted between. All gifts endure, all faces return. The sea sighed in answer, its depths echoing the promise. The world breathed with it, quiet and unknowing. For the gift of the desert was patient. It did not hunger, nor hate, nor love. It only waited, as it always had, for the moment when men and women would again forget that some gifts, once given, are never meant to be unwrapped.